$17 million was spent on the state senate. Where the hell did $17 million go?
So like most conservatives in Colorado, I'm still at a wake from the last election. Finally, the bar bill is coming due. To help me understand what happened, friend, arch foe, Ted Trimpa, good to see you again.
Great to see you, John.
All right,
Great to be here.
I knew the election was going to be bad. Now, it's already been a couple months. Been going to therapy every day.
Yeah, doing psilocybin, kind of figure out your depression, how you're going to like deal with all of this. Yeah,
been talking about the stages of grief.
We say psilocybin and not mushrooms, by the way. It's medicine.
Is it medicine?
It's medicine.
I thought it was just shrooms.
Oh, no.
Actually, you were part of that campaign.
Yes.
That was
I
your
should
thing.
disclose that. Should disclose that. Yeah. Part of the campaign. It wasn't my thing, but I was part of the campaign.
Why so?
Well, I actually believe in this.
But I was surprised. Just get off for just a second on that.
Sorry about that.
Pardon the pun. Let's get off on that for just a second. I was surprised.
I'm supposed to do those puns.
I was surprised that one passed. And here's why. Not because the issue wouldn't fly with Coloradans normally, but because the homeless problem, because of the crime, because of just this feeling of unsafeness that has been plaguing the metro area that we've all been dealing with, tied in with the issue of pot, that people are just going, let's take a pause here, folks. I thought this one would be tough to get past the finish line, and it actually passed comfortably, not wildly,
right?
But it
more
passed.
so than a lot of us thought it would.
Yeah. What was the final number? I forget. It was almost 52.
It's almost 52.
Yeah.
But I think that people were assuming this is like marijuana, and marijuana is causing all these ills. And we can argue about whether or not it's true they're causing those ills. But psilocybin was different in terms of how it was framed, different in terms of how it's used. And also, I don't think people, assume if we're talking about a drug, or a substance or a medicine, that automatically translates to, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. I think if you had an election on, injection sites, then on injection sites, I think it would be different. I think people would assume that what you're trying to do could contribute to a lot of the problems that we're seeing. With this, people just weren't making that connection, and the reason why they weren't is because there really isn't, unless you're a naysayer.
If you could take a time machine, if voters could vote on recreational marijuana today, do you think they'd vote the same way?
Yeah, I do.
I wonder about that, because the frustration right now, the frustration with crime, the frustration with homeless, the vandalism, and it's tied up. Maybe there isn't a connection, but there is certainly a perceived connection.
Right.
I don't know if it would be the same. And I'm feeling it and hearing it from a lot of people who go, I voted for it, but I am just so tired of the drug scene that I'm seeing. I'm tired of the needles. I'm tired of the homeless. I'm tired of stepping over piles of human feces. I'm tired of stepping over passed out people.
Right.
And there's the imagery that pot was a gateway to what we're dealing with this.
Right.
And we can have an argument whether or not that's
which is
that's
part
true.
of what my response is going to be. But I think we have to be careful not to conflate or go down the path that you're talking about, and that is this is a gateway to all those other ills. There's a reason why we need to be doing marijuana reform. A lot of that is criminal justice reform, and also a lot of people are already doing it, and so let's legalize what's already happening. Now, all these other ills come up. You can't say, oh, it's marijuana's fault. Oh, it's the crazy uncle across the street. So everything bad that's on the street is because of the crazy uncle. We need to address what those problems, let's take homelessness, and I'm gonna tick off my progressive friends. We need to address it, but we need to address it in a way where we reject this idea of this obsessiveness with compassion. We need to be compassionate, but at the same time, we need to be realistic. So I say do a little bit what New York's doing. Say there's a right to shelter, And a right to shelter means you have to agree to these 3 things. And then you put in, and you allow, if they're a threat to themselves, and this just isn't working out, you take them in, you put them in treatment, and you figure out whether or not this is going to work. And if they need a place to live, you put them in a place to live. You know,
Well,
but if you want to live in a tent, go to the mountains.
Right. The whole idea of compassion, it's not compassionate to let mentally ill people out on the streets without treatment.
Absolutely. There's a compassion complex that results in actually hurting people.
Let's get to what I really wanted to talk to you about, which was many conservatives thought this is our year, that this is going to be the year we're going to win back. Let's not talk about DC first, because we always, everybody likes to talk about DC. I want to talk about here. This was going to be the year Republicans struck back. And why not? I mean, why not? This was a year that inflation was worse here in Colorado than really any other state. By any measure, things hurt here most. It was a year that crime was terrible here. Crime that people really could feel. Car thefts were #1 here in Colorado. People felt it. We saw just a lot of stuff that was tough here. This was going to be a year. There was hopes that at least the Senate, the state Senate, was within grasp. And then Priola, who was basically a Democrat in Republican clothes, decided to try to make it permanent. All right, but so even then, at least we're going to get close. And at least in the House, with redistricting, we're not going to get there, but we're going to make good strides. And why that's important is that on those committees where maybe there's a 2-seat difference between Republicans and Democrats, you know, a lobbyist, maybe we could swing one of those Democrats our way on an issue, make a bad bill a little better, or flip them completely. But to do 2 is just too much. So if you only have to switch 1, it makes a big difference. This was going to be a good year. No, nothing, nothing. It was a blowout on every single level. Everything failed. Did you expect that your side would have as many victories?
No. Oh, no. We didn't expect the margins either.
Really?
If you take a look at the polling, I think the polling was on roughly the same on both sides. I think that the Republican side was being a little bit rosier about it. Oh, well, we may be down 2 or just up 2, but it's going to be a lot better. Because when you think about crime, you think about inflation, you think about immigration, it's really going to drive that number up. We were looking at numbers, and we were up by 2, up by 3, up by 2, up by 1, expecting it all to be really close. Then all of a sudden, you had, I think, 2 things that overlaid all of this. And one, whether you like it or not, abortion and the overreach about what that looked like. And a lot of people think about the Supreme Court and what they did, and the nominees that did the decision, even though Alito was appointed by somebody else, but they tie that to Trump. There was a reaction to Trump in the tenor. It's not like I'm voting against you because you're a Trump. I'm voting because I don't like this tenor, and I associate you with that tenor. And then you add in the abortion piece of it. You're a 2-point race. You're now all of a sudden a 4-point race. And I'm not for sure polling can always drill into that, because you kind of don't know until you know. And a lot of it broke, I think, and it broke relatively late. Now, that's one. I think that's the overlay in terms of what happened. I think the second piece is, okay, let's say the number floats around, I don't know if it's real, 17 million was spent on the state Senate. Where the hell did 17 million go? Know a lot of people on the Republican side, well respected. 17 million? I mean, these are numbers that in the old days, I don't know what it is today, but even just a few years ago, we spent on all of our races. And so we have 5, 6, and we're doing 7. If we're doing 17, there should have been network TV on all the time. Or if they're doing groundwork, God, the doors on people's houses should have caved in because they were getting knocked on so many times. You know, you just have to wonder.
I'll tell you a story. I don't know if you've met my son, Chance, has Down syndrome.
Right.
And so he's 18 now. Can't read, can't write, just like his old man. And but we had to get an ID
You're
for
an
him.
extraordinary father, by the way.
Well, thank you.
A lot of things that people don't know about you.
I'm
That I
extraordinary.
get a little bit more of an insight in being a very, very good friend of yours.
Well, it's an honor to be his wingman. He's John Belushi. I just clean up his party messes. But we had to get an ID for him, and now under one of the ridiculous things you guys passed to get more votes that you can harvest, he gets a ballot because he has an ID. Oh, get this. He's also got jury duty, which is, yeah.
Hey, you know, that's why you have jury selection.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we'll just go with that. Anyway, so I got this ballot for him. I'm thinking, well, legally, I can help him, do this. I decide, no, I'm not going to help him do this. But a few days before the election, knock, knock, knock on my door, two lovely ladies are there from the Democratic Party to help my son, who's now 18, if he needs any help.
Understanding the ballot.
Right. Yeah. Now I'm thinking about this. I live in Boulder. There is not a competitive race in Boulder. There's not a single thing your team is going to lose in Boulder. There's not a single thing that it's not a race there that's in trouble. So maybe is it a state race or something? No. So it's not like a close race. It's not like those foot soldiers need to be there. If you're going to place them anywhere, you're going to place them in one of the state Senate seats someplace else.
Right.
But the operation is so good that even in a safe place, you got people knocking doors, trying to get to this brand new voter to that they don't know he has Down syndrome. Yeah, what? Please spend some time with him. Go ahead and talk the issues. But it was pretty amazing the depths of that. We're here.
Yeah.
That's the type of infrastructure that gets out, and it's all, of course, perfectly legal. When I say vote harvesting, that's vote harvesting.
Right.
That is getting out the vote.
So two responses to that. One, you need a culture within your party and your side as to how we're going to do things. And that culture can't be, oh, we're only going to do those activities over here. Because you're going to have people active in every district all over the state, even, heavy Republican, heavy Democrat. These people want to participate. You want to have something that says, we believe in democracy and you can be part of it too. So they're like, well, what's the door knocking program? What does that mean? I don't like to use the word harvest. I grew up on a farm. If you talk harvest, it's a combine. It's not going, you don't use a combine to get ballots. But if you're taking a look in terms of a lot, at least outside looking in, I'm not a Republican in the inside of how you guys do things. It's as if you're like, you make a decision. Well, there might be a culture of something, but we're going to focus on this. And that's all we're going to do. In the initial years in 2004, yes, we did that in order to win. But infrastructure and culture built up over time, so everybody understands that this is what the way it should be.
Let me take you off track just for a little bit, because I want to get an opinion from your side on this very specific issue. So there's some folks in the Republican Party. They had a wonderful gathering outside of Boot Barn, and they made
which Republican Party here?
Yeah, and their point was pretty clear that thanks to the open primary. And by the way, I'm not a big fan of the open primary either. I question it, but that's neither here nor there. Open primary meaning that unaffiliateds, and technically I'm unaffiliated now, can play in either primary, either party's primary. But they said if we had a pure primary, then we would have had better candidates in the general. That meant Ron Hanks would have been the candidate.
Certified wackadoo.
Well, but let's just go with this. Tina Peters would be Secretary of State, not Pam Anderson.
Oh, gee whiz, let's run somebody that's going to get indicted.
Okay, but let me ask you the question. These are people who are saying, If those people, if Hanks and Tina Peters were on the ballot, then they would have won, and Republicans down ballot as well would have won the general. I'm asking you, as a strategist, as one of the architects of the Democratic takeover in Colorado, from your point of view, not from the Republican or conservative point of view,
Right.
from your point of view, is there any truth? Do you see any
Okay, my first
possibility of
response to this is whoever is telling folks or saying that Ron Hanks would have won, Tina Peters would have won, who's their political consultant? Captain Kangaroo? You know, Mr. Green Jeans? I mean, that is like nuts to me.
Why is that nuts?
That's not.
Explain it to me like I'm 2 years old here. Help me out.
First of all, one, almost half the voters in the state are unaffiliated. It's like what, 44%, 45, somewhere in there. And you go down to where Republicans and Democrats are, there are roughly 100,000 registrants, you know, in terms of the difference. And you mean to tell me that Tina Peters, who knowingly took, you know, election information machines out of secure areas, is going to be seen once people know as, oh, that's the person we want as Secretary of State? I mean, you're high. And you listen to some of the things Ron Hanks says. I mean, that commercial where he like shot at a Xerox machine, I'm sorry, a copy machine. Don't want to like.
You're just dating yourself with that.
I am, or whatever, a brother, blah, blah, blah. Right. Anyway, he thought, you know, it can't be Dominion because he doesn't want to get sued along with everybody else. Really, I'm going to take a gun in a commercial, blow something away because I'm going to advocate for a theory that the election was a fraud that is not believed by more than 2/3 of Americans, and oh boy, that's going to be my winning message. All I can say is, if that is what, if you want Captain Kangarooism, go for it. Because we will win over
as a guy
and
old
over
enough
and over
to be a fan of Captain Kangaroo.
I watched Captain Kangaroo. Most of the people that are watching the show probably don't know who they are.
So let me ask you a slightly different way. As a strategist, as a guy who has to raise and spend money on the left to get your guys elected, if Republicans did in fact elect Hanks and Tina Peters to the general, would that have made you happy?
As my operative side?
Yeah.
Yes. Boy, tell me, this is like fishing, you know, shooting fish in a barrel.
Is that
this is like now?
Is that
why? For me,
is that why so many progressives? Is that why so many leftists put what, like $500,000? I forget what it was, into ads attacking O'Day.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Let's separate out the two because I do want to talk about that. But I do want to end with, not end, but add in to the other part of the answer. As a Coloradan who believes we need a vibrant Republican Party, because I believe that there needs to be really active debate, I don't think any one sector or party has all the answers. And quite frankly, you need to have argument about it in order to make it better. And I know that sounds mamby-pamby, Pollyannish, but it's true. As a Coloradan, do I think it's good? No, of course I don't. Do we need like reasonable, and I use that term purposely, reasonable candidates to have a real debate? Now, to Democrats playing in the primaries. I've said this once, I'll say it 5 times. That's a one-trick pony. You can only do that so many. We did it to Scott McGinnis.
When you say it, you mean putting money into a primary to make sure the weaker candidate, weaker Republican pops out.
Correct.
And you did that with McGinnis to make sure that Dan Mays won.
Right.
And you guys tried.
He was a stellar candidate, by the way.
Oh,
$27,000 going into the general election. I'm like, you go.
Well, Dan Mays got what, 11% of the general vote. I mean, it was pretty impressive.
And Tom Tancredo entered in, you know, to all this, who I like.
Oh, Tom's just
and it's like,
Tom's a beautiful man. He's just a great guy. But the same thing happened to O'Day in that lots of money was put in to try to scare Republicans from voting for O'Day,
right,
and to try to get Hanks to get the nomination. Who put in that money?
That I don't know. and I can
There's
theorize about
a
it.
lot of dark money. Well, go ahead and theorize.
And listen, we can talk about dark money.
Yeah, theorize though.
To
Who do
call
you think?
something dark money, and this is where 90% of my progressive friends are going to go, oh, I can't believe he just said that. I call dark money free speech.
Yeah, so do I.
Spending money is free speech. If you want to figure out a way in terms of what's going on, then figure out a way in terms of what's going on. You can't set a rule to say, you can't do that. Regarding the Ron Hanks, O'Day, Democrats spending money to try to get Ron Hanks elected. One, what the hell? Do you really think that Republican primary voters and unaffiliates that may be voting in that primary are going to choose Ron Hanks over O'Day? That's nuts. I mean, there has to be some little overlap somewhere where you could say, okay, maybe one of the two could be in that primary and that's who we want. Here, it was like over here and over here. So the fact you even think that you can make that happen, I think is nuts. Second, the messaging, I got confused. And this is what I do. I'm like watching these ads. I'm like, so who are these directed at? What is the message and what are we trying to get them? I honest to God, still to this day, do not understand the messaging. And I think what happened was too much polling. We're going to do research testing, message testing. We're going to figure out what it is. We're going to slice and dice the electorate in 19,000 different ways. And then we're going to get the little path that we're going to go through when, you know, I don't think that's how people act.
Oddly, I saw less ads than I ever have. And it's probably because I've watched less TV than I've ever watched. And so, yeah, I'll stream videos and I'll stream Netflix and Prime movies.
Even stream news and you won't pick this stuff.
Yeah.
You got to watch local TV. To get
and I didn't. All right, let's get back to the differences. You went back to abortion,
yep,
and Trump, and these are the issues.
And when you say Trump, my point on this, and I'm sorry to dice words here a little bit, tenor of Trump, because I think people are voting. It's not I don't want Trump. I think people are voting the tenor that's being created by that. It's like pox on your house. We're tired of that kind of perspective. So anyway, go back to your question.
What was frustrating for me was media not doing its job on abortion. And that the scare tactics, and I'll give the left a lot of credit for this, the boogeyman on abortion, particularly in Colorado, was well done. That abortion was not in danger in Colorado.
At all.
At all. In the slightest.
We're the most liberal state, or at least one of.
We are by far the most liberal state on abortion.
And from my perspective, thank God.
Whatever your perspective is, abortion was legal here before Roe versus Wade. It was legal after Roe versus Wade. It's legal to up to and during birth. It hasn't changed. It won't change. And no matter who you elected, it wasn't going to change. The media didn't do that.
So the media is supposed to say, well, abortion in Colorado really isn't an issue because they're one of the most liberal states in the country. So that really shouldn't be an issue there.
No,
well, you know,
the media.
Newsflash: people in Colorado may care about that lower socioeconomic woman in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, that all of a sudden needs an abortion and can't get one.
Not my point. Not my point. My point is that in Colorado, one of, if not the most liberal state for abortion, there was this sense that Heidi Ganahl was going to make abortion illegal, which was ludicrous.
And she can't walk across the street.
I've seen her walk across the street.
I know, and I shouldn't say that because I've met her. She's really nice.
She's a wonderful.
She ran a crappy campaign.
I don't care if she ran a great campaign. I think the chances of her winning in this state at this time was bad.
Because Jared's done a great job.
Jared has done a great job self-funding an incredible campaign. in a state
okay,
with
we can argue about that next.
We can argue about that next. The point being, the scare tactics around abortion in Colorado were remarkably overblown and used to scare people, around the country. But in Colorado, I think especially so, in that the media, yes, did not explain that the threat here in Colorado was really non-existent, that it wasn't going to change. And in fact, it was even then codified even more so in state law, that you would have to change both houses and the
Have a vote
governors.
of the people.
And yeah, I mean, it was just it was a crazy scare tactic, and it was because voters didn't understand. And I believe your side did a wonderful job keeping that whipped up. Fair?
Of course you're going to whip it up, but this makes an assumption.
But there's a nice way of saying, yes, John, absolutely, we did a fine job doing that.
But I think we have to be careful.
Because that's what politics is, baby.
Well, no, it's about winning. But I think we have to keep the perspective, or at least not keep, realize, respect, or note that there's a perspective that people in Colorado are going to care about this issue generally and how it affects the country, and care about what's happening in other states, and know that in many issues, Colorado's a leader. So we want to maintain the status in terms of messaging as a leader. So to say that we shouldn't care about abortion because we have some of the most liberal abortion laws, I think is not an offense, but I think it's a little disrespectful for voters.
Let me concede this.
Because they may care about what's happening. Again, I go back to this, that poor woman in Alabama.
Let me concede this, but voting for your state rep, voting for Secretary of State, voting for your governor, voting for your regent has nothing to do with that poor woman in Mississippi. Voting for your congressman, voting for your senator, certainly, absolutely. Voting for your state
in terms
rep,
of a direct, I give you that. In terms of tenor is important. Oh, we don't care about it here because, we've already got
when
that
it
problem
comes to
fixed.
law, it does not matter. And you can be all touchy-feely about tenor. I actually care about
Tenor's
policy.
Not touchy-feely.
Tenor is absolutely by
come
definition.
on.
Tenor by definition is touchy-feely because you go to court and say, Your Honor, I'm looking in the book here under tenor, and it says you get to rule by tenor. Yeah, tenor by definition is touchy-feely. But let me say this.
All right, we're going to argue about that one too. But...
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, let's take it to a judge and let you find the tenor rule.
Oh, because the definition of tenor in terms of how it affects society is something that has to be determined by a judge.
Good God, you're a frickin' lawyer. I'm not, and you're saying tenor isn't touchy-feely?
But the law doesn't...
is a term.
Oh, right. But talking about tenors, we should talk about Looney Tunes, but we'll come back to that.
I love Looney Tunes. All right. I was trying to concede something, but you had to go off on that.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to concede that one of the problems Republicans have, among many, is they refuse to accept the new demographic realities of this state, which is this state is, and has been for a long time, a pro-choice state. This state is, and has been, and will be for a long time, a pro-gay rights state. This state is, and will be for a long time, a pro-cannabis state. These are realities that conservatives need to accept if we conservatives are going to make any sort of policy advances in the future. From my point of view, the song I've been singing a long time, which is, if we want to make policy advances, these are things we are going to have to work around, because that doesn't mean Colorado is not a limited government state. It doesn't mean that we're not a low tax state. It does not mean that we are a pro-property rights state. But it does mean...
I agree with all that.
And that means we're going to have to face those realities. And that's why...
But your side gets caught up in all of this.
It does.
We want to argue about trans kids.
Right.
We don't want to argue about gay, but we're kind of argue about gay because we're going to argue about trans.
Well, because that's not gay.
We're going to argue about abortion because we want to be pro-life, because We're
Listen,
in terms of a certain type of Christianity. This is what we want to do.
I will argue
pick your fights.
I will argue about compelled speech all day long because coerced behavior is a wrong. I will argue about parental rights and education all day long because I believe that is a wrong. I will defend people's rights to have the relationships they want to have because I believe that is a right. So yeah, you can call it trans issues, but I also believe in parents' rights. No, don't.
Yeah. It's another one we can argue about.
No. That's uncomfortable for me.
Hey, you want to go there? Let's go there because it's been so politicized. And it's unfortunate that it's been that politicized because the number of trans kids, everyday trans kids that are out there, the 12-year-olds, 13, 14, 15, that are dealing with this issue for them. And then you see all this tenor about it's wrong, it's weird, and drag queens, reading stories to elementary kids and how that's awful and evil and what's going to happen. And it's gotten to a point where I want to look at some of these folks that are using this for political gain when they're really not talking about the substantive issue and say, you know what, when we see the suicide rates 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm going to lay them at your feet because your rhetoric in terms of how you've been talking about this issue, and not you, but how people in that world have been talking about it. I put a lot of that blame, I will, at their feet. With that said, has our community, the general LGBTQ, I don't like all the other letters, why can't we just say gay? But
do you put
it's handled it really poorly.
Do you put any of it?
Sports is something that we should have figured out. Do you really think that a male to female that goes out, let's say they're playing field hockey or wherever there's like some light contact or even heavy contact in a sport, and you're a parent, and you have your daughter who's out playing the game, she really loves it, and then there is a male to female that's out there, just biologically bigger, plows your daughter under. That's a problem. We have to figure out the realities of the world and make a fix to it, rather than saying, oh, gee whiz, I can't believe that you wouldn't allow something like this to happen. It's purity, it's black or white. Well, you know what? The world's not black or white.
You just laid...
Sorry, I'm like, this issue gets me on fire.
You laid the problem of teen suicide on those people. Can't we...
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Well, can't I just equally then, black and white, lay the problem of teen suicide on people who confuse teenagers and say, as one teacher said, if you're not 100% comfortable in your own body, you're trans. Here's all this other stuff to confuse you by.
Right.
So don't,
I feel like I'm talking to my husband.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's a very smart man.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
He produces the Gutfeld Show, which is 11 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock here in Colorado.
You
Fox
said that.
News guy.
You said
I
that.
know. I'm sorry.
You said that, yeah.
Shameless promo.
Like anybody who watches this doesn't already watch that. All right, so can't you equally say that those people who take these young minds and then introduce them to something that they've never thought about before, that, yeah, maybe you're actually not a boy. Maybe you're something else that you've never even thought about, and enters into a world that they were like, what the hell? That they're innocent in this, that they're actually saving those lives? I might just as easily say, you know what? You're responsible for that teen suicide.
Okay.
And so don't you be laying that
agree,
on me.
but
Don't you be laying that suicide on me. I'm laying that suicide on you. And let me see that and raise you this. My beef with this is the cancellation of free speech, which at one point liberals, sadly progressives don't care, but liberals used to defend.
Right.
To coerce people's speech and say that somehow, due to my sensibilities, you now need to change your language to fit my worldly constructs.
Right.
You need to call singular people plurals now. You need to say biologically male people are now she, or you're going to lose your employment. You're not going to pass this class. We will kick you out of this school.
Right.
This is not wrong. It's evil. It's
Okay.
really
All right.
wrong
All right.
shit.
Evil's a little strong.
No, it's not.
Let's separate.
Coercing people
I get the
and
coerced
taking away
speech piece.
and
I get that.
taking
I get
away
that.
free speech
let's
is
separate
evil.
let's separate out the pronoun issue, because on the pronoun issue we're going to be not completely in agreement, but a little bit there. On the issue about
I'm a free speech fanatic.
Thank God, because that voice, and I don't mean this in a
They're
negative
gone.
way, that voice needs to be there. People need to
And
hear
it
it
used to
more,
be-
because
it used to be
there
the
isn't,
left
there
that was
isn't.
that.
I know, and the left isn't that today. The woke culture is
What happened
it's
to you
off the
guys?
rails. It's off the rails in terms of, but if you're not this, you're not that. When you can't do this, and then you can't do. That's nuts. That's crazy.
I've been told.
But, whoa, I want to back up because I want
let
to
me just say
answer
this one. I've been told that being proper with pronouns makes you a bigot.
Okay.
Now, so to be called, to say it's the same as using the N-word.
All right. So, oh wow. So let's put the pronoun issue here, and I promise you we're going to get to it. But I want to address, because I'm not going to let this one lie, the teacher saying to a student, well, do you understand that there are not many different ways, and we can argue about all the very different categories and who you're claiming to be today, and pansexual, polysexual, all that stuff is bullshit. However, there are trans kids. Transgenderism, or whatever the proper term is, exists. And we need to recognize that it does. I think what's happening on our side is we're overreacting to it, because part of the woke culture, part of the, I'm trying to feel like that I'm really doing something, and you know the community's really been putting a lot of pressure on it, and I really want to feel like that I'm being opening and this is what I'm doing. So in a classroom, they're like, whoa. And I think they overdo it. I think it's something where you say, you know, this is what it is. I mean, do you talk about gay when somebody's, you know, a second grader? Well, I think you're gay. Well, I tell you, if somebody's telling a second grader, I think you're gay, well, that's wrong. Because it takes some time for people to figure out, you know, who they are and what they're going to be. But for us to say, because somebody overplays it when they do it, I don't think that's fair. Pronouns. I'm a grammarian. I love grammar. And I have to tell you, it's really tough for me when you use they in all different kinds of ways. Drives me nuts. I think we need to respect.
School. You want to see these scars from the rulers on the knuckles? No, I cannot use they when I look at a singular person. It's not. You know, so you're telling people.
But at the same time, we need to recognize and respect, not just recognize, respect that exists. And so we have to figure out a way. Transgenderism.
Yeah, I listen carefully to this. I understand that that person that I see as male, that is obviously biologically male, I understand and respect that he thinks he is a woman. I don't care that he thinks he's a woman. All the power to him. I see him as a him. He needs to respect that I see him as a him. I respect that he sees him as a she. This is the world. And we go on.
This one.
The thing is,
we have a fundamental disagreement on this one.
But this
on
is
the they, them piece and all of that. I get the frustration and confusion around it, and people aren't prepared for that yet.
But I also deserve respect. I do respect that. You think you're something that you are biologically not. Fine. When I say,
that assumes, though, John, that assumes that the biology of that human being still is the prevailing way that you look at someone. And because you see biology, because that's, you know, grew up in a place where it's like we had boys and we had girls, and boys played with little army things, and girls played with little dolls.
You're talking about social issues.
No, I'm not talking about social issues. I'm talking about how people view the sexes. And just because biologically somebody is something, for them to say, listen, who I am, who I feel, who I know, does not match my biological sex. For someone to say, well, I don't care. I'm old and I'm from a different generation. So I know that you have a penis And since I know that you have a penis, I'm not going to use she. That's wrong.
You're 50,
5.
55. But if you identify as 25,
Oh, no.
no, what's the difference?
Huge difference.
Oh, really? Why?
Oh, one, we're talking about age.
Yeah.
When you talk about sexuality in terms of how you define yourself and the roles, gender roles, and what people...
Age roles or no age
Oh,
roles?
come on. Oh,
Really?
come on.
What about
I'm
the person?
going to wake
what
up...
about the
Oh,
person
gee
who-
whiz, I have to tell you, it's really a difficult problem for me because I've always dated and now married to somebody who's significantly younger. All of a sudden, I'm going to wake up and say, ring, ring, hi, Arash. Guess what? I'm 25.
No. What, like you
Okay,
ring
that-
and you wake up and say, I'm a woman? No. You might always,
All
good
right,
God,
all right.
I feel like I'm 80. Or people who feel like they're part of a different race. Or now that we have kids who feel like they're of a different species. Let me tell you.
Oh, come on. The kids of a different species thing. Okay, thank you, Heidi Ganal. Why don't you dress up in some furry little outfit? Go out there and eat some rabbit feed.
Oh, really? So
I mean, that's nuts. That's nuts. That's
you don't think it happens?
No,
I just want to make sure we get
okay,
this
you know
on
what?
record.
When I was growing up, I really wanted to be a lion. I tell you.
I'm
I was
asking you a
like,
question. You're telling me that there aren't kids out there who believe that they're animals.
they're kids. They're going to think all kinds of things. Let them think all kinds of things. And don't go to the, oh, there was kitty litter in a closet.
No, I'm not
when there
doing
was
that.
kitty litter in a closet because they were worried about a shooting and kids need a place to take a piss.
No. I just want to make it clear. You don't think that there are kids out there who think they're kids?
Kids are going to do all kinds of things. Let them do all kinds of things.
Yeah, I agree.
There are people, their kids are going to be like, I'm a dinosaur. Rawr. I'm going to run around thinking I'm a dinosaur. I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be a dinosaur. And they learn lots of things about dinosaurs.
Right.
Is that really wrong? What are they going to do? Grow up and say I'm a dinosaur, so I'm going to
Right.
marry a reptile? That's not going to happen.
You understand, from my point of view, what goes on in your head is fine. But there are a lot of people out there.
Oh, but if you exhibit it externally and I don't,
You-
not say
I
agree
don't-
with it, I'm not used to it because I remember when we went
When did I-
around in
when did I say
horse-drawn
that?
carriages.
When did I say any of that? Did I?
No, I'm presuming a frame in
Oh,
terms of
see?
how you see it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, see, that's what
admit
you're
that.
doing.
I admit that.
Yeah,
I admit
so-
that.
And again, the bigotry goes this way. I have not expressed any of that. What I'm saying is, when I see a man, if he's in a dress, he's in a dress. You know what I see? I see a man in a dress.
See, I see a woman.
Great.
But see, this is the fundamental problem of understanding what transgenderism is. It's not,
No,
oh,
what I see is
I
a
tell you
complete
what you
lack
see,
of
what
respect.
you see is a transvestite. You see a guy who likes to dress up in dresses, which is very
No.
different from someone who identifies in their soul as a different sex. That's different
Yeah, the
than
reason is
the
because-
little house husband or whatever the husband or construction worker that likes to go home, put on lingerie, put on some heels, put on a dress, and walk around the house. That doesn't make him
The
a
beautiful thing
male
is,
thinking that he's a female. That
beautiful
just
thing
makes
is-
him, he's kind of kinky, he has a fetish. He likes dressing up in dresses. So what?
because I don't know that person's soul. And
But then can't you, oh, listen, Mr. Free Speech and Freedom,
Right.
can't you respect this is who they think they are? Why can't you respect that? And I don't mean to, I'm not, this isn't
because
like
it's not my
row at
it's
you.
not my job to respect every stranger's identification. It's not my job, and it's not my responsibility.
This is
as
obviously a
everyone does.
big issue because this is like 80% of what
Right,
we're talking
because
about.
because it's so remarkably offensive that I somehow lose my speech, that I am not respected, that my speech doesn't count, and that what is plainly obvious in front of my eyes is discounted. And so,
Okay, so I have a question about this.
and so no, what I hate, what I
Why should
hate,
you care?
because when somebody's speech is said, you're discounted from speaking, and the words that come out of saying 2
No,
plus 2
you
equals
should-
4. No, you ask me a question, then you don't let me answer
Okay,
it.
sir.
So when somebody says 2 plus 2 equals 4, and the response is, you're a bigot. You're like, no, it
Okay,
isn't.
that's wrong. That's wrong.
And that's what it is.
That's
and
wrong.
if you say that is a black man there, and you said, you just used the N-word.
Right. That's
And
wrong.
that's what this is. And
That's
so what what
This is
those
part
of
of the
us,
old wokeism thing that's going
what
on.
we're-
This is like
so-
taking like basic principles of what should understand in the evolution of time
so
and who
what
we are,
see,
and
what
doing
I
the
see,
extremes and saying the extremes is the norm,
So-
which it shouldn't be.
so when I see this transgendered person who identifies as a woman, and because I don't see the woman, because I'm not inside that person's mind, I don't understand their soul.
Okay.
They might see themselves as a woman. Great. When I say I don't care, I don't mean that in let me finish this. I am not disrespectful. I am respectful. Fine. You think you're a woman. Fine. I don't hate you. I actually respect you. Go feel like a woman. Go. Dress the way you want to dress. Fine.
Okay, so from
But you're telling me that I can't speak. Oh my God. And that when I do, I'm a hateful person. And that more importantly, people in the future, not old men like me who don't,
or me,
or who don't mind being called a bigot, because I've been called a bigot all my life, but that kids can't speak the truth or get kicked out of their jobs or their schools or be marginalized or be chilled. Their speech will be chilled. That breaks my heart. That's why it matters.
okay, the last 15 seconds, we could go to that in an extraordinary way. But before going there, because I think that
And we do need to wrap this up.
I think you did a major leap, which I would argue is way too much of a leap, because I get where you're coming from in terms of respecting your view and what you're doing. My question, though, is a lot of what you're saying, not a lot, a piece of what you're saying is premised on, oh, that is a male who identifies as a female, but I know that person's a male.
Biologically?
Well, you know, you may not know that. There are a lot of males who think that they're females, and when they, in terms of how they present themselves and what they do, because they feel like they're a female, you wouldn't know it. So basically what you're saying is, well, if you're going to be a male to female, you really need to look like a woman.
My bet is that if
I'm having fun. I mean,
if you take a chromosome test, that people with an XY are men.
Oh, and so we're going to run around and take a
No, I'm
chromosome
not saying
test so
that.
you know, so you can say,
I'm
well, now
saying
I
that-
have your
I'm
chromosome
saying
test.
that
So that,
there are objective truths, aren't there?
yeah, there's objective truth, and that is if this person identifies as a woman, that's their objective truth.
That's their objective truth.
You just need
Do
to
I have-
respect that.
Wait, do I have?
What you're
what
telling
about
me?
my
What you're telling me is,
wait,
that
do I
person-
have any objective truths?
You have, but you have to respect the fact.
Why do I have to respect? Wait a minute. So their objective truths I have to respect. Do they have to respect my objective truths?
Okay, we should. One should respect your objective truths. However,
Because
as
all
a
I see
society-
here is a one-way street.
No, I get it. But what you're saying is that then, in terms of how policies are adopted and implemented in schools and in society, it has to be, well, it's according to my objective truth.
Isn't that
And
where we're
so-
headed?
Well, then, if you have somebody else as objective truth, why couldn't it be reflective of them? Because we now understand this issue a lot better. That's like saying that you should have non-gender bathrooms. What's wrong with that? Bueller?
Well, don't
Sorry.
we have non-gender bathrooms now?
Not always. Not always.
Isn't that exactly what we have now in schools? Non-gender
it's-
bathrooms?
And so what we need, I guess where I'm coming from is, you can have your objective truth. Go ahead. I know.
I wanted to get back. I wanted to get back on politics.
Yeah, let's go back.
But by the way, this argument is not going to end. And
I agree with that.
All right, I'm going to force us back on track.
Okay.
Because we can go around in circles on this. Last time Democrats won everything. You see me scratch the record and put it back over here. They didn't have a supermajority.
Right.
Democrats now have a supermajority, sans one vote in the Senate.
Yep.
That means they can put anything they want almost on the ballot. They don't, including repealing Tabor, changing the tax code, changing term limits, whatever they want. They don't even have to go and petition.
Right.
This scares a lot of us.
Yeah,
It means
as it should, as it should.
It means that Polis finally is going to have to show his true nature. He hasn't been able to stand up to his progressive wing. And if he has aspirations for running for the White House, and don't tell me he doesn't, if there was ever a time to show he can, he's going to have to start showing it soon. Will he?
One, yes. Now, in terms of how you're asking, is he going to show it to do X, Y, and Z? And you've already defined X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying that that's the case. Do I think he'll pull the reins? Yes. To your question, or you're setting up the question, or it's not necessarily a premise, but just setting it up. Because we have close to supermajority, or with one, whatever the numbers are, that we can put something on the ballot, and putting something on the ballot may be repeal of Tabor, may be, changing the tax code. You know what my response to that is? That's called democracy. The people still vote on it. And if the people adopted and said yes to Tabor, well then go back and ask them, do you want it still? Because my bet is, if you put on the ballot a question, should the people have to vote to raise taxes, that would probably pass. There's just a lot in Tabor. Doug Bruce, the convicted criminal, put a lot of stuff in there that a lot of people didn't realize, and then we responded with a single subject, which ended up being an albatross around our necks in terms of determining how you fix something.
Let's get back to Polis. The last 4 years, the last 4 years have been terrible for the business community in Colorado. There have been such incredible, we can go into chapter and verse. I've been surprised how the business community has cowered, to be honest. At the regulatory state, under Polis's administrators, but also how they haven't really banded together to fight some of these things, including the Family Leave Act when it went to the ballot. I was surprised that the Colorado Chamber, formerly Casey, and the Restaurant Association really were AWOL when it came to standing up to this, and now the payroll taxes are starting to kick in. There's only going to be more of it now that there's a larger majority in the legislature. I'm looking for the governor to show that business side that he has been touting. How will that manifest? Will it?
All right, but I'm going to start with an argument around the premise of some of the setup that you gave.
Yeah.
And that is that family leave is bad. Family leave is not bad. And part of the reason why a lot of the business community didn't engage on it is that maybe they either, one, felt like, hey, part of this is actually the right thing to do, or two, we got to pick our fights.
Do you think this family leave is good?
And if this is a fight that we're going to lose, we can have arguments whether it's good or not.
Do you think?
I think in
good?
principle, I think it's a good thing to do. I do.
Do you think this one is a good one?
And
I think this is I think this is the most ludicrous.
Oh no! Come on.
Ridiculous ones. And it will go.
So we can sit around and say, "Oh, gee whiz, we don't want to do that." You know what? Look in the rearview mirror. If you want a rearview mirror, drive a car. In terms of Jared,
when it goes bust in 4 years,
the governor is, whether, and I know that you'll probably laugh when I say this, is business minded. The guy wouldn't have what he has today not being business minded. And it's not like what he has today was put at his feet. What he has today, he created. And he understands how business works. I'm not saying just to blow sunshine up his backside, because it's the truth in terms of what he's done. Do I think he'll walk the line, understanding that we have a more democratic legislature and it's going to be a little bit more progressive? Yes. Do I think that he's going to pull the reins on some of it? Put a little bit, not pressure, but encouragement. Hey, we got to figure out how we're going to do these things in order to not control, but guide some of this? Yeah, and he should. That's what governors do. That's what Roy Romer did. That's what Dick Lamb did.
And I think legislatures. They were also had back then. Let's be honest. Democrats then we're not like the Democrats now.
Well, that's true.
You
That's
know,
true. We didn't have a Democratic Socialist
4
caucus
years
back
ago, and even 2 years ago when we had this conversation, and I asked, what are you most worried about? You said hubris both times.
then. Right. And I'd say that today. And I would say that today.
Let me tell you, hubris wasn't the problem because your friends went crazy. I have never seen an explosion of government regulation, government taxation like I have in the last 4 years in Colorado, bar none. And they got reelected in massive amounts.
And you
so
know
let me
what?
tell you,
And you know what?
hubris wasn't a problem.
The economy ground to a halt.
So hubris wasn't the
didn't.
problem.
No, hubris in terms of the breadth, in terms of what you want to do, in terms of the power that we have. Is there still hubris? Yeah. The fact we have a Democratic Socialist caucus, even though there are members of it that I personally like, I don't know many of them that well. I get where they're coming from. Do I think that's bad in terms of what we're doing? Yes. And I'll give an example just generally in terms of the country. You take a look at the Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez endorsed candidates, you know, in the competitive seats in those primaries, and even in general elections. They lost every single one. Moderate Democrats, and I'm using that term purposely, won, what, 90% of the races? You know, Exhibit 1, Abigail Spanberger. That kind of environment, whether people believe it or not or want to argue with me, I think exists here. I will say this once, I'll say it twice, I'll say it 5 times. This state is not lefty progressive. It's not. 44% of this electorate.
Why is the legislature so?
Because the Republicans have put up really bad stories, really bad candidates, and when they do, they don't have clear messaging. I mean, think about the campaign around the governor. What's his name? Barking dog guy, Steve Wells from Greeley. Oh, we have to vote Republican. Fire Jared Polis. And then he does this like crazy ass, like hit, you know, a windshield with glass and then show, you know, immigrants crossing the border, and then all of a sudden say, this is the reason why we need to fire Jared Polis and we need to elect Heidi Ganahl. That is, I mean, who did they message test us with? Seniors in the senior center?
We Republicans had, I think, the best set of candidates we've had in a long time.
I will give you that. I will give you that. Yeah. I wrote an op-ed about it. O'Day is out of central casting. He is.
What is your biggest fear that Democrats will do in this next session?
Overreach.
Give me a specific.
I do think we have to be careful on taxes. I do think we have to be careful on things that come from the woke perspective in terms of this is how we have to think, this is what schools need to do. I think we have to be really smart about that. Really, really smart about that. And I actually think, and I know you're going to look at me and say, Ted, you need to be more specific. You're not giving me examples. I think, now you're going to laugh and you're going to start singing, tenor. Tenor is really important because that's how a lot of people react. And that's how the electorate reacts. And a lot of the reason why Republicans are losing, it's not because they didn't have decent candidates in some races. It was the overall tenor that's coming from them.
Let me give it to you.
Because, you know, people respect, you know, I disagree with 90% of what you say. I just disagree with it. But, you know, the tenor about how you talk about it, I like that.
I'll give it to you. I'll give you this way. This is where, while I despise almost everything Jared does, I'll give you a case in point of how he does it differently. So while DeSantis and Abbott are sending guys to New York City, the migrants there, our governor's doing the exact same thing, but he's sending them to their final destination and doing it quietly.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
You didn't read the Politico story?
I'm being stupid. I'm being stupid.
Yeah, he's been busing migrants to New York City, just like DeSantis and just like Abbott. Was in Politico yesterday. We taped this, I don't know, before you saw it, probably a couple weeks back. Yeah, so he's been...
Which is obviously not a political stunt, because if it was a political stunt, they would have all kinds of media around it.
Well, that's why
which there's not.
Yeah, he didn't do it.
Oh, but I'm sure it's the liberal media because they don't report things.
No, the point being that...
And I'm being facetious, by the way.
He did the exact same thing, but he did it with a different tenor. So the exact same policy, but in a different way, which is what makes him a different politician.
That's great. Power to Jared. I mean, the governor.
The governor.
Power to him.
He's acting like a Republican.
He is not acting like a Republican. He's acting like a leader.
Sending the
And I know
migrants
this
to New
sounds
York
like,
City?
oh my God, can you just like put out more flowery language around the governor? But that is what a leader does, is you figure out ways to address problems, and not from a box of, I come from this place, or I come from this place, and so therefore everything I do is from here or from here. You step above it. Roy Romer did this all the time, putting aside split chambers. Roy Romer was a great governor because he looked at a higher level in terms of what's going on and didn't say, well, because my side is here, I have to do it. Or, you know, in a Republican governor, this side is here, so therefore I have to do it. Jared, I mean,
Roy Romer,
you have to love that. That is a leader.
Roy Romer was able to stand up to his party a lot more often than this governor can stand up to his party.
Well, we'll see. This next session, there's going to be a lot of tests.
Well, there was a lot of tests in the last 4 years. I didn't
Oh my
see this
gosh!
guy.
I mean, we don't publicize this stuff, but in terms of just even the conversations that have happened over the last few years, I mean, there's a lot of credit to be given to the governor, to Jared.
And overall, all the fee increases over.
Oh, because you know, we really don't need to be paying taxes for things that the public needs. We really don't need to be paying fees for certain things
we just need to
that
ask
society needs.
What's wrong with consent? What's wrong with asking
Oh my
people?
God, so every time we're going to raise a fee for a driver's license, oh, let's put that to a vote.
Billions and billions of dollars in taxes.
Billions and billions.
Oh.
No, I get what you're
There's
saying.
the disregard.
I get
the
it. I get
casual
it.
disregard.
But that's not. Oh, okay. I know.
Do you know how many billions of dollars?
No, I realize
in
I
new...
come across as being casually disregarding, and I don't mean it that way.
That's degrading. That's the degrading to taxpayers. We pass a freaking constitutional amendment that says all we want to do is be asked before you raise taxes, and instead,
do they really? Okay.
Instead, you pervert the word tax.
Do you believe in representative government?
Yes, and that's why we.
Oh,
but when
representative
it fails,
government.
When it passes.
Oh,
do you believe?
Until it's around revenue measures. So then the House of Representatives was formed as the House of the people, and all revenue measures. This is the United States.
Do you believe in the Constitution?
All revenue measures have to start in the House because the House is the House of the people. Because the number of people that each member represents is roughly the same number of people. To
do you
make
believe
sure
in the
that
state constitution?
Of course, I believe in the state constitution.
So when the Constitution says all revenue increases must be voted on by the people.
Well, I tell you, the extremity.
All right, let's just leave it there.
Okay, all right.
Take care. If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.